Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSPs. Ukraine war news update, geopolitical news update, the third part thereof for the 4th of July 2024. Things in my brain, I need to go out and have a pint later. That'll sort me out. Anyway, let's get on to geopolitical news. Okay. I reported earlier, because it was being widely reported, that, well, in fact, Tucker Carlson made the claim himself that he was going to be interviewing Zelensky. He had previously interviewed, of course, Vladimir Putin, and he put out, looks like we've got the Zelensky interview we've been trying for 2 years, and with particular intensity after interviewing Putin in February. The point is to bring Americans much needed information about the conflict that's completely reshaping the country's position in the world. Coming soon, we hope. That was then paid to by the office of the president of Ukraine. Mr. Tucker Carlson should check his FSS sources more closely. The president of Ukraine has a completely different schedule, and Tucker Carlson is not there, wrote the president's press secretary Serhiy Nikiforov. Oh dear. So it looks like that's not going to happen. Shame. Actually, I think that would be really good, personally. Now, fascinating stuff here. So, the secret of why Kyiv, says Anton Gerashchenko, was not taken in 3 days. So, why did the special military operation fail, as according to Putin? And it was finally revealed by Putin, it appears today. He said that when Russian troops were standing near Kyiv, the Western partners asked Russia to cease fire. And it did. Russia stopped. But the Ukrainian armed forces did not. Russia was deceived, says Putin. Therefore, Putin continues that Russia, the aggressor, simply cannot declare a ceasefire right now. Does two things this. It explains to his domestic population why they failed to take Kyiv. Because it was those pesky Ukrainians cheating. We did the right thing. We stopped. We had a ceasefire, which is what Western partners asked us to do. And we went through that. And it also says why they won't stop, why they won't do a ceasefire now. It does two things that. Interesting and obviously nonsense. Former Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Valery Zaluzhny, has already left for Great Britain, so he's obviously got trained up in how to be an ambassador, and will soon begin to perform his duties as a Ukrainian ambassador to UK. Slovakia is preparing to increase the supply of electricity to Ukraine in the autumn-winter period. Of course, they have lost 70% of their output capacity. This was announced by the president of Slovakia, Peter Pellegrini. Pellegrini called this period probably critical for Ukraine. I'd agree. Energy is Ukraine's biggest single issue, I reckon, at the moment. Shashank Joshi, referring to a news piece here, or some IT news. A new report indicates state-backed cyber espionage groups are increasingly deploying ransomware when they're wrapping up their on-target operations for financial gain, disruption, distraction, misattribution, or for removal of evidence. So you get ransomware being used to sort of cover up that these guys are actually state actors. Ransomware was used to attack the NHS outsourced company and just recently, and the idea was it's almost certainly Russia behind that, but we can't prove it beyond reasonable doubt. And so therefore there's plausible deniability, and ransomware seems to act to misattribute causality there, but also for other reasons like simple financial gain, etc., etc. Okay. China-Russia axis is really getting their demon claws into Central America, while the Russian disinformation blitz has the US electorate paralyzed in a disinformational haze, says Jay Kyiv. What's he referring to? Right. We already know the White House released a statement a few months back saying there are huge amounts of disinformation around Central America, Latin America, etc., etc. It is one of the hotbeds of Russian influence campaign. Here we have I'm going to translate this. This is from Arturo McField's Yescas, who is a journalist and former Nicaraguan ambassador, saying the Nicaraguan dictatorship receives pro-tempore presidency of SICA. So SICA is the Central American Integration System. It's the economic and political organization of countries around there. So they receive the presidency of SICA. The main task of the dictatorship is to expel Taiwan as a permanent observer and gain accession to Putin's Russian Federation. They will strengthen the agenda of the tyrannies of China and Russia in Central America during the next 6 months. Mel Zelaya could be General Secretary of SICA. So the idea is that China and Russia are getting heavily involved in influence operations in that neck of the woods, and that's just south of the US, right? Meanwhile, one side of the political aisle in the US seems to be doing things to benefit Russia in this whole game of 4D chess that's going on. It's just worrying times, really worrying times at the moment. Meanwhile, there's the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting. Russian President Putin and Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping have met there, as I told you, in Kazakhstan. Now, Belarus has been officially admitted to that Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The Republic has become the 10th member of SCO, along with India, Iran, Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Russia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. And then you've had Putin rounding up everyone willing to join the war against Western civilization. Today, he spent time praising the Taliban and Russia's new partnership with them. Great set of guys to get into bed with. Well done, Putin and Russia. I mean, it really is kind of like we're lining up this axis over there and the Western world. And at the moment, we seem to have like this isolationist view in the US that wants to retreat from that. And the vacuum's going to be filled by these kind of state actors. This is an inflection point in history. And the US is self-combusting at the moment. It's just so depressing. Just now, CSIS has released satellite imagery of several signals facilities in Cuba likely to be used by China to spy on the US, just miles away from the US Southern Command. Brilliant. Another bit of good news to add to the whole axis of evil are being something of a challenge at the moment narrative. Okay, at least 9 of the 33, scare quotes, neutral Russian athletes allowed to participate in the Paris Olympic Games visited occupied Crimea, took part in propaganda tournaments, or allegedly support Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, according to a news source on July the 3rd. And I saw a picture of one of the female athletes in full-on military regalia, who's been heavily involved in these activities. Is going to be one of the athletes under the neutral umbrella in neutral flag in Paris. Hungary definitely supports Ukraine on its way to the EU. It is important that Hungary recognises that Russia is an aggressor, and that was stated by Volodymyr Zelensky in the interview for Bloomberg. That interview where he came up with quite a few nuggets we've already gone through today. Right, okay, I'm going to go, not that yet, I'm going to go on to US politics just really quickly, because this does pertain to what's going to happen with support for Ukraine going forward. Now, the Democratic Party is at their own inflection point right now. Their decision is, or it's not really their decision, it's Biden's decision, essentially. Well, there are 3 options, and Katy Case is going to talk you through this in a second. But basically, Biden's just met with Democratic governors, and it seems that they are supporting him, but there are murmurs going on for his declaration that he's going to continue. He says, I screwed up, but he vows to continue. The problem is, the polls will do a lot of the argument around this. So the polls are showing, as they appear to be coming through now to show. Initially, the polls said that there was no change after the debate. Now, the debate's been whipped up into the public eye, and those TikTok viral stuff videos are going around. And even my own son had seen one. You have this situation whereby the public consciousness has been awoken to the idea that Biden is not strong enough or not compass-mentored enough or vigorous enough or whatever to be the Democratic nominee for the presidential elections. So what happens? You have these different options. I know I said Katy K is going to talk through them. One, he remains and he fights hard. That seems to be what's going on here, but there's actually stuff going on underneath the bonnet that most people in the news probably aren't aware of, or most people in the public aren't aware of. But even though he's saying, I'm going to keep fighting on, that could be a holding position whilst there are all these conversations taking place. So either he stays on and fights hard, and the Democrats will coalesce behind him, and they will just have to double down and make sure he wins and get their party machine behind him. Or he steps aside, and if he steps aside, that in all likelihood, it's going to be Kamala Harris, his vice president, that takes his position, and then they get a vice president in underneath that. So the reason why that is the case is because that's kind of what she's there for. As vice president, you step in when the president dies or an issue like this, okay? But also it's a financial thing, like I've talked to you before. There's £91 million in the Biden-Harris pot that has been campaign donations that go to Biden-Harris. They can't be redirected to anyone else, kind of legally. It's Biden or Harris. So she, in order to get that $91 million to be used in a campaign, rather than have to give that back or go through some legal hurdles in order to get hold of that money, she's the obvious choice, right? You go instead of Biden. Now, the received wisdom is that her polling isn't very good, but actually that's not quite true at the moment. Her polling is actually pretty much the same as Biden's. The question is, how is she going to be with independents? Well, actually, with black and brown voters, it might be quite useful because of her own heritage. And yeah, she could be useful. She is a former lawyer. She has been very, very good in certain parts of the debate, even against Biden. She slammed Biden in the original nominee debates going back to before 2020. And that's kind of why she was taken in. But her campaign then sort of frittered out. Now, she has been very strong in select hearings, or what we call in the UK select hearings. She has been very good when she's not scripted, but she's less good when she's scripted, rhetorically speaking. But the question is, will she have enough to win that presidential election? And not everyone's sure about that. And so therefore, the third option is, do they go for an open Democratic National Committee convention whereby it's a kind of free for all and anyone gets to be voted for? That can be properly chaotic, as it was back in 1970 or something. Was it Boston? Anyway, so that's the other option. We'll kind of see how it goes. Things are going on under the bonnet.
If you tell me, so here's the thing I would say to you.
So, sorry, this is Scaramucci, the Mooch, and Katy Kay, a journalist. He was press secretary, wasn't he, for a few days, or advisor, or whatever it was, for a few days for Trump, 11 days, wasn't it? But he's now very much not in that frame of thinking. But he's actually pretty astute. I watch pretty much all the rest is politics US. This is a pretty good analysis going on here.
You Democrats do better historically with bold decisions. Jack Kennedy at age 43, youngest president to be elected. Teddy Roosevelt, the youngest president ever because of McKinley's untimely death. Barack Obama, age 47. Bill Clinton, age 46. Yeah. Okay, so the Democrats typically do better with younger candidates. Republicans do better with older candidates. So this would be a very bold move, and it could rally them. It could coalesce them. Okay, you have to tell me how she's going to do on the campaign. If she is stilted and she's guarded and she is defensive as she was in the 2020 primary, he'll probably eat her alive. If she comes after him in the way she used to come after people as a San Francisco prosecutor,
or
she
the
could
way we saw
him. She could shred him.
In the Supreme Court nomination hearings for Brett Kavanaugh, where she exploded and was a kind of star in those hearings in the way that she went after Brett Kavanaugh in those hearings. So there are definitely two sides. And she's
politician.
She is an underrated politician, and she's not good when she's scripted. I mean, she does not, unlike Joe Biden at the moment, who seems to do better when he has auto cue and prompter in front of him. She seems to do better when she doesn't. I know that she's had a lot of media training, but she doesn't manage that very well. Look, there are three things, right? One, Joe Biden stays in the race and tries to turn this thing around and get over that last performance. Two, he gets out of the race, but it goes to a competition amongst Democrats, which happens kind of between now and the convention and is decided at the convention. Three is the option you're talking about. Kamala Harris takes over as president before the convention. There is no competition, and she is the nominee. I'm going to go more likely with the second. I've been told by people on the campaign that the chance.
Why I'm playing this to you is because she's just saying, I've been told by people on the campaign. So there's a bit of insider knowledge here of Democrats. Both of them have had insider knowledge about Democrats here.
Go more likely with the second. I've been told by people on the campaign that the chances of him getting out are 5%. That was a couple of days ago. I'm waiting for those polls to come out that give us a more considered opinion. But I've also had people in the White House who have had a long history with Joe Biden talking about how all the conversations that need to happen are happening around Joe Biden and that there really is no choice at the moment. So
honestly, so that's really important. So, you know, you can read all these articles saying, yeah, I'm going to stay in for as long as it takes and blah, blah, blah. And I screwed up, but I'm going to take it to Trump. But when you're like, I'm a journalist, I've got a shed load. I mean, she works on, she's a BBC journalist, but actually she works on American TV now more often. She's got loads of connections, and so does Scaramucci. And they know what's going on with these Democratic Party bigwigs and whatnot. Because you've got to also remember, it's other things are happening. So you've had two House representatives come out, lawmakers come out and say Biden should step aside. You've got the Netflix co-founder, who's a mega donor for Democrats, saying Biden should step aside. So when you start getting people who are giving money to the party, when you start having lawmakers starting to move, that then may like break the floodgates, and then more and more people will voice their opinions. So while in public you might hear that governors are supportive, actually other things might be happening behind the scenes.
Of the view that he will have to get out, but I think the Democratic Party, Anthony, they find it very difficult just to shoehorn somebody in. They feel they need to have that open process. What I do agree with you all is that the next couple of weeks are huge and not just in terms of American politics, huge in terms of what happens in the rest of the world.
Ukraine. NATO
is at stake. The war in Ukraine is at stake. Taiwan is potentially at stake. What happens in the Middle East is at stake. The post-World War II era of American-led protection of Europe is at stake. I mean, this is a massive decision that is being made right now in American politics.
And that's why I felt I had to talk about this, because it does affect the outcome of election, obviously affects the outcome of the US election, and therefore all of these different theatres, all of these different political topics is incredibly, incredibly important. So I'll be keeping a close eye on that. I think that Biden will go. I think he should go. But if he doesn't go, there'll be, everyone coalescing around him. But I just think there are some people, like Anna Lickman says, that he's still got everything in his favour, all the keys to the White House. And actually, if you go and get someone else in, it's too much of a risk, too much of an unknown, and there's every chance that it won't work. I think that's a risk worth taking. I think you need to energise the electorate. I think you need to give people a reason to get out to vote. And I think somebody else will give you that option. The issue is that it's kind of a bit late in the day. Really, it would have been nice if this was like 2 months ago. But therefore, it's going to be an argument between Kamala Harris or another. And an open, and if it comes to an open convention, that could be quite chaotic. Right, going to it's voting. It's election day. I haven't voted yet. I'm just about to shoot out to vote in a minute. We have, this I thought was interesting, because we talk about European politics, and I know it's going to annoy my Leave voters who watch this, who probably get incensed every time I talk about how we should have stayed in the EU. Interesting, now with the EU shifting to the right, whether that's something we want to rejoin, like right now, since it's going through this period. But I think, the UK could have been a bit of hopefully a reliable partner in there, and so on and so forth. Anyway, former MI6 chief Sir Alex Younger has given some Brexit truths here, says Liz Webster. Quote, Putin would have been absolutely delighted by our decision to leave the EU, and so would Xi. Of course, it weakens EU as a bloc and as a political entity. That's me adding that bit on. He continues, particularly since I've left office and I've travelled around Europe, I'm profoundly depressed. Just nobody mentions the UK. We've made ourselves irrelevant. And this is extraordinary. The beginning part of this century, we were the dominant force. France has effectively eclipsed us, and you just don't hear a discussion of us. I think Brexit has marginalised us. It was kind of intended to do exactly that, and that's kind of intended to do that. Talks to this involvement of Russia in that, to weaken Europe, to weaken the UK. We're stronger together, but each of us are weaker apart. And that plays into Putin's hand, that plays into Xi Jinping's hand. I know you won't all agree with that, but it's very interesting that our former head of MI6, like military intelligence chief, saying that, and foreign intelligence saying that that we are now effectively irrelevant on the European stage. I mean, that is a damning indictment. Now, we've got elections today. It looks like there's going to be a Labour landslide. The question is how much? How much will Labour lose? I'm going to try and do a live stream tonight at about 11:30 UK time after I get back from the pub. Whoops, that could be dangerous. I've just realised I went on to record a whole thing on UK election today, and of course realised that we got a purdah. And even though I'm just some random dude on YouTube talking politics, I'm actually technically not allowed to talk about the UK election until the polls close tonight. So on election day, you can't sort of report on political stories and kind of influence the electorate on polling day. So all that stuff I had about UK election lined up, and some stuff that I forgot to talk about last night in the live stream, and how certain parties might have their vote share affected by different demographic proportions of the electorate. I can't talk to you about that now. So anyway, that's enough from me. Thanks guys, take care, speak soon. I'm gonna go and vote.